You ever stop and wonder what's really going on in your kitchen? You know, how a steak gets that perfect, delicious crust, or why a perfectly good apple starts turning brown the second you cut it. Well, it's not magic, it's chemistry. And today we are diving deep into the fascinating story of food browning.
And that really brings us to the big question, right? You've seen this a million times. Some foods, you just leave them on the counter and they start to change color. Others, they need that intense sizzling heat of a pan to get that beautiful brown. It looks kind of the same, but what's happening under the hood? Well, it's actually two completely different scientific processes.
So on one side, you've got this slow, almost silent browning. Think of that cut apple or a banana that's getting a little too ripe. And on the other side, you've got the fast, dramatic, sizzling transformation that gives us things like seared steak and fresh-baked bread. Same color, totally different science. Let's start with what's happening on the counter.
The main character in our countertop story, the culprit behind that browning apple, is something called the enzyme effect. The best way to think about enzymes is like they're nature's tiny, invisible construction workers, and they are always busy, constantly changing the food all around us.
So what exactly are they? Well, enzymes are these natural proteins, and their whole job is to be catalysts. That just means they kickstart and speed up chemical reactions, all without getting used up themselves. They're kind of like nature's little chefs, and they're behind everything from a banana getting ripe to dough starting to ferment.
And believe me, their handiwork is everywhere. That browning we see is just one tiny piece of what they do. They're also the reason fruit gets softer and sweeter as it ripens. They're behind the fermentation that makes our bread so light and airy. They even help develop those sharp, complex flavors in aged cheese. And yeah, they're also to blame when butter starts to spoil and get that off smell.
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting. In the kitchen, enzymes are a double-edged sword. They can be our absolute best friends or our worst enemies. It all depends on the situation. Sometimes we want to cheer them on, and other times we need to stop them dead in their tracks.
Just think about it for a second. We love the enzymes that help age meat and make it tender, or the ones that turn plain old milk into amazing cheese. But we definitely are not fans of the enzymes that turn a perfectly good banana into a brown, mushy mess, or put those little brown spots all over our potatoes. So it's all about control.
So what's the science here? What's actually happening when that apple turns brown? It comes down to one specific enzyme. When you cut into a fruit, you're breaking cell walls and exposing an enzyme called polyphenol oxidase. We can just call it PPO to the open air. The second that PPO meets oxygen, boom, the browning reaction starts. And this is where you get to play scientist in your own kitchen. Because if you know the formula is enzyme plus oxygen, you can mess with it. Give your veggies a quick dip in hot water, blanching, and you'll deactivate the enzyme completely. Or you can add an acid, like a little lemon juice. That changes the pH and slows the reaction way down. The simplest trick? Just cut off the oxygen supply with some airtight storage. No oxygen, no reaction. 3 easy hacks, all backed by pure science. Okay, so that's the whole story for the countertop, where enzymes are running the show. But what about the browning that happens in a hot pan or in the oven? Well, here we're entering a whole new world. This isn't about little enzyme helpers anymore. This is pure, raw chemistry.
The star of this second story is heat. That's the key ingredient. When you apply high heat to food, you unlock this incredible cascade of chemical reactions. And these non-enzymatic reactions, they don't just change the color. Oh no, they create some of the most complex, most delicious flavors we know and love. Right at the heart of this heat-driven world are two very famous processes, the Maillard reaction and caramelization. And I guarantee you have tasted both of them, probably thousands of times, even if you've never actually heard their names before.
First up, let's talk about the superhero of flavor, the Maillard reaction. It is this wonderfully complex chain reaction that happens when amino acids, which are just the building blocks of protein, and some specific types of sugars get heated up together. The result? Hundreds of brand new aroma and flavor compounds that weren't there before.
And oh my gosh, the list of things it's responsible for? It's basically a hall of fame of deliciousness. The Maillard reaction is the artist that paints that golden brown crust on bread. It's what gives you that irresistible sear on a steak. It's the deep, rich flavor of roasted coffee, and even the toasty perfection of a browned marshmallow. It is, quite literally, the taste of cooked.
Okay, let's pause here, because this is super important and clears up a lot of confusion. Let's look at the reactants row.
The Maillard reaction needs both sugars and amino acids to happen, but caramelization, that's what happens when you heat sugars and only sugars. And that difference in ingredients leads to a totally different outcome. Maillard gives you those deep, savory, complex, roasty flavors. Caramelization gives you nutty, buttery, sweet flavors. The examples make it obvious. Grilled meat for Maillard, caramel candy for caramelization. Totally different worlds.
And, heat is doing more than just creating flavor and color. It's also fundamentally changing the food's texture. The perfect example is cooking an egg. You start with a clear, runny egg white, and it turns into an opaque, firm solid. That process is called protein denaturation. The heat literally unravels the protein structures, which, by the way, is a super important first step for the Maillard reaction to even get started in foods that are rich in protein.
So as we start to bring this all together, the big idea here is that your kitchen is actually a laboratory. Seriously, every single time you cook, you're performing experiments. You're controlling chemical reactions, whether you realize it or not.
So let's just boil it all down. The crucial takeaway is this. There are two main roads to brown. One is driven by those little enzyme workers on your counter, and the other is driven by pure heat in your pan. Enzymes can be your best friend or your worst enemy, but now you have the tools to control them. And heat? That's your key to unlocking a universe of incredible flavor through chemistry. Understanding this science puts you in the driver's seat.
See, when you finally get the why behind what's happening to your food, you just become a better, more intuitive cook. You know why you crank up the heat to sear a steak. You know why a little lemon juice saves your apple slices. So really, the only question left is, now that you've got this new scientific superpower, what delicious experiment are you going to run next?